So if you could define for me, what is sex, what is gender, and then what is gender identity? And I think from there we can kind of go off in a bit of a different direction.
Sex I usually use for the biological side of things. There are two sexes. It's binary, although not 100%. It's, let's say, 98% binary, males and females. And that is true for so many species. Not for, there are species that are exceptional, but in the primates that's the typical pattern. And that relates to chromosomes and genitals and hormones and brains, basically how the size difference between the sexes, so that sexual dimorphism we call that. Then the genders, I usually don't define gender by male or female, but more masculine and feminine. It's the way you express yourself and how you have been taught to express yourself, how you have been taught to behave as a man or as a boy, or as a woman or a girl. And so that's a cultural thing. It's variable from country to country. It's variable over time. And gender expression is much more flexible and is a cultural phenomenon. And I argue in my book that the same applies to other primates, that they also have genders, because, for example, a chimpanzee or bonobo is adult when they're 16. So they have a very slow development. They learn a lot of things in their life, including, I think, how males behave and how females behave. So gender is a concept that I can apply to other primates as well. And then you ask about gender identity. You have sexual orientation, that is what you are attracted to, individuals of the same sex or the opposite sex. And then you have identity, which is what you feel you are. Are you, and that's mostly divided in male and female, do you feel you are a man or do you feel you are a woman? And gender identity is also a biological phenomenon, I think, because it arises very early in life. Most of the cases, like at 3-4 years of age, it is expressed. And it's irreversible. I think there was a recent American study that showed that only 2.5% of the children who say that they are transgender change their mind 6 years later. Well, that's extremely low, 2.5%. That means that they're very persistent in what they think. And the society, of course, tries to change their mind. Society, let's say you're born as a boy and you say you're actually a girl. Society is going to resist, but they keep going. Which means it must come from inside. It's not something, they're under pressure and they still maintain that position. So I think it's a biological thing.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you clarified all of that, and you specified the position that while I'm going to quote your definition of gender, because I thought it was really interesting. You said gender refers to the learned cultural overlays of a biological male into a man and the learned cultural overlays of a female into a woman. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. But then they stretch that out so far to believe that everything's sort of a top-down programming, and there's no biological basis for sex. Sure, you could make the argument of chromosomes or gametes, whatever your natal sex is. But then when it comes to gender, they think that's like a free-for-all type of decision that one makes. And I guess the expression of your gender is a decision you make. But can you describe some of those biological bases for gender specifically that you're arguing?
Yeah, so the reason we have a gender duality is because we have two sexes. I don't think we would have genders if we had no sexes. If we were a cloning species, where that means that you have no genitals, we have no sex differences, we all look exactly the same because we're cloning, no one would have come up with the gender concept, and there would be no genders, I'm sure. So genders remain connected to the sexes, even though they are a bit free-floating. They're a little bit independent, but not so independent that you can say, I'm going to be sex neutral, I'm going to be without gender. It's going to be a very tough position to maintain, especially when you reach puberty and all your sexual interests are aroused. I think it's a very difficult position to maintain. So I don't believe that gender can be uncoupled from sex, even though it has a bit of an independence in how things are expressed.